So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thanks so much for taking time out to join me, to join us, the crew, the team from the Eckhart Yoga Academy. Um, we've got half an hour to share some philosophical reflections on the practice of yoga and Yoga Nidra, and to talk a little bit about what it is to just be alive and how, certainly for me, the practices that we're going to explore over this next half hour have been so revelationary and so life changing in terms of my inner relationship with myself, but also in terms of how I navigate the world. Because I think that there can be an expectation when we get into yoga world that it will, be a panacea for all of our problems, and we'll end up perhaps being like this character over my shoulder. We'll end up being a perfect Buddha and be able to manage anything that life throws at us. But being alive, as the title of the webinar sets the stage, is it's really messy. It's really messy to be human. It's complicated. We're complex. We're contradictory. Life throws us continual surprises and curveballs that mean that things arise in us that we had no idea about. Is that not true if you reflect on it for yourself, that sometimes you're going about your day or your week and then something happens and you find yourself responding or perhaps even reacting in a way that is a complete curveball to you? Oh, I didn't know I'd feel like this about that. So we can never really be prepared for life. And life is somewhat messy. So I'll get into sharing a little bit, as we promised in the description of the webinar, as to some of the philosophical practices and understandings I've come to realize and I've been taught over the years that relate to Yoga Nidra, and talk a little bit about self-compassion and welcoming, and how really there's one kind of principle here which we can describe as welcoming, as being with ourselves and with the mess of life, as to be very transformative for our mental health and our well-being. So what I'd love to do is actually let you take a little moment for yourself as you're arriving here. And this is a meditation, but it's not something that you need to close your eyes for, or rush off to find your meditation cushion. You can do this right here and right now with me. You can have your eyes open if you'd like to, or you could close them if that's your thing. Really, the difference between the two is one is being interoceptive, is drawing into ourselves and coming into our inner world, and the other just means that we're more engaged with our senses and the world. But either way, we're still conscious, we're still sentient. So you decide what works for you. And just over the next couple of minutes, how would it be to initially just let go of being in a doing mode, in a performative mode? I'm here to, soak up some information with James Reeves, or I'm here to get something out of this, or this is part of my busy day. And just let yourself kind of flip from doing into being. Part of the invitation of that is could you be just here with me now, timeless, letting go of the sense of a ticking clock and just dropping into a deeper sense of timelessness. And to let yourself feel spacious as well, to not be contracted and busy and doing, but just, I've got a moment here. I can just be. And to also let go of your intellectual self, the learner, maybe the teacher that's here, the one that's identified with understanding something or knowing something. And then how would it be to embrace your inner world? there'll have been some things happening for you today that will have left you feeling a certain way, left you thinking about some things, processing, understanding. And there's this body that's here that might be tense or relaxed or comfortable or uncomfortable. There's the different images that are maybe running through your mind. Can you just let all of that be here? Nothing to do about it. Just embracing it, being with it. And to also embrace or open up to life as it is. All of the good bits, the bad bits, the lovely people, the tricky people, the things that you've yet to figure out, the dramas, the love. So there's this sense of starting to open out, to be wider than the individual conundrums. And to have this quality within it of welcoming, of embracing, of befriending. Just, there's all this. All my inner world, my outer world. And just for the next few breaths, leave it all alone. Let it be there as it is. Nowhere to get to, nothing to do, just embracing. And then as we start to dive into some of the content I'm going to share with you, you don't have to come out of that mode. You can still be, even as we're here together. But, some of you might want to pick up a notepad or, write the odd thing down. That's fine. But just check in with yourself. How is that? Just to take a little bit of time to simply be and to welcome life as it is. Because when we look at the tradition of yoga, and this is contextualized in the way that I teach Yoga Nidra. Yoga Nidra is quite a broad subject now, and it's really popping in yoga world. Lots of people are talking about it, teaching it. I've been personally exploring these practices for a couple of decades now. This isn't new to me, even though it's becoming very much like a thing in the yoga zeitgeist. But philosophically, way back, 500, 1,000 years BC, there were these teachings that apparently swept in from Babylon at the time. And these teachings said, look, face it. Everything you've tried to do so far, you've tithed to the temple, you've said your prayers, you've taken your rituals, you've prayed to your gods and your deities, but you're still suffering. Life's still hard. And what we've come to realize is that there's something in the human experience that's not suffering, that's untouched, that's untainted by all of the different experiences of life, some of which are good, some of which are not so good. So the proposition of this philosophy called Samkhya, which was built on through Buddhism and built on through Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, which are really a sort of, in a strange way or an abstract way, have become a foundation for modern yoga teaching. These teachings present this idea that there's consciousness, there's sentience that's aware of, and then there's life experience. Then there's our emotions and our thoughts and our feelings, and there's Susan and there's Greg, and Greg's lovely and Susan's a bit tricky, and there's the job and there's the dog and there's the vet bill, and there's life going on. So the teachings kind of said life's over there and it's messy. To experience liberation and freedom is to know yourself as sentience, as consciousness. And it's much more complex than this, but we've got half an hour, so hopefully we can do a potted version. And these teachings gave people a lot of freedom. They were profound. They helped people awaken, quote unquote. And then over centuries that followed, there were a few different philosophical schools that deepened these teachings, because as they stood, there was a slightly life-refusing idea of this. I mean, at the time, there were loads of monasteries that were built, and the first child of many Asian families were actually sent away to the monastery to spend a life of being a renunciate. It was seen as a kind of privilege or as an honor to be a renunciate and to experience this consciousness. But it was quite life-refusing. It was like saying, life's messy, so, go and sit in the monastery or sit in the cave and get quiet and still, and you won't suffer anymore. But then over time, there became the deepenings of these teachings. One school was called Samkhya. Not Samkhya. One school was called Advaita Vedanta, or non-dualism. And another school later on in a different region of India was called Kashmir Shaivism, or what we now know as Tantra. And both these schools had a slightly different take, but I'm going to focus on the tantric element. And Tantra essentially said, consciousness, it's true, like we can come to realize it by getting still and being quiet. We recognize we're not our thoughts, we're not our feelings, we're not our sensations, we're not the vet's bill, or the dog, or Susan, or Greg, thank goodness. We can be free from all of these things. But as we've sat in consciousness over generations, we've come to realize that it's not like it's over there and life's over, separate from it, but it encompasses it. And consciousness pervades everything. It touches everything. It's like a caress. It's in you as you're watching me talk. It's in me. It's in a piece of fruit that we might be eating. It's in our lover, or it's in the difficult person that we're relating to. It's in everything. So why do we need to check out to the monastery? Why do we need to escape? Well, how would it be if consciousness is genuinely touching and pervading everything? How would it be to see everything as an opportunity to practice? So now eating a banana becomes a spiritual practice. I mean, sometimes if the banana's good, it really is. But there is an opportunity to practice yoga on everything. And in particular, when we contextualize this back into Yoga Nidra, to practice yoga, or to practice this welcoming, this embracing, this being with our emotions, with our thoughts, and with our body sensations. So now things shift from, and I recognize that there's a real school of thought around, when I say mindfulness, there's lots of different permutations of that, lots of different variations, but classical mindfulness says, you're not your thoughts, watch your thoughts. And say, for example, a negative thought, a difficult thought comes around, we just watch it, we watch it pass by, and we stay dispassionate. But what if that thought keeps coming around? And if you've meditated, like I have, long enough, you'll know that some thoughts really do just keep coming around. So it keeps, 2 minutes later, it comes back around. And, for 6 months of your meditation, you've been having the same thought that's coming back around and around and around. Now, if someone knocked at my door and kept knocking, in the end, you'd have to say to yourself, I think maybe they want something. Maybe it's an Amazon delivery, or maybe the DPD driver's a bit confused, or maybe it's the neighbor wants a cup of sugar, but I should probably answer the door. So Kashmir Shaivism essentially says emotions, when they come to you, are to be befriended. are to be welcomed. And this is in mindfulness for sure. But to take it a little further into the realms of Kashmir Shaivism or Tantra, not just, oh, the emotions here, but what does it want? What does it need? What's it here to show me or tell me? Is this a particular part of me? I mean, when we unpack that just for a moment, Carl Jung, who is a particular kind of flavor or cup of tea that I like, I really enjoy and appreciate his teachings and his philosophies and understandings. Carl Jung coined a phrase, complex, that as human beings, we're really complex. You know how we are, or we may find it very hard to describe exactly why we feel the way that we feel. Is it because of our childhood? Is it because Susan reminds me of my mum? You know, is it a combination of those things? Is it something else that's a mystery to me that's in my unconscious? So we are really complex as human beings. But the way to get to know that stuff is to welcome it. Now that's easy, isn't it? When it's love. Oh, you know, I'm welcoming my feelings of compassion for the world. You know, I had a lovely yoga practice today and I feel just great. And oh, the birds are singing and everything's lovely. But then maybe we go down the shops and someone's rude to us and we have a reaction. Or, you know, we're out in our car driving in traffic and we nearly have a collision with someone because they were driving dangerously or weren't paying attention. And we get triggered. So really, these welcoming practices, these life-embracing practices are inviting us to start to be with our complexes, start to be with our triggers, start to befriend and get to know the roots of why it is we were calm and having a lovely time and then pop, something happened and we're triggered again. Because there's a certain point where our yoga practice comes to a realization, well, maybe it's not true for you, but this is what happened for me. In the early days, I roll out my yoga mat, I feel calm and peaceful, and then I go into life, and inevitably that calm and that peace would be dissolved somehow. So I roll out my mat and, you know, get peaceful again. And then at a certain point, I realized, well, maybe it's time to look at why it is that I can't carry that peacefulness with me into life. What is it that's pressing my buttons? So another aspect of this is to say, maybe one of your regular visitors is anxiety. If you do a Google, like a general search on why people are interested in yoga, anxiety is like a big pull. Sleeping disorders and anxiety seem to be the big things, but we could pick another one like anger. Anger is probably one of the most unpopular human emotions. It's tricky. Yet, anger has a purpose. It's a boundary maker. It's saying, no, I don't want to have this experience anymore. Or I would like you to behave differently, and every other way I've tried hasn't worked. So I need you to know in a stronger way, there's a no from me, or there's a boundary from me. I mean, there's lots of other reasons why we might be angry, but I'm just, you know, being generalist because of time and because of the nature of what we're sharing together. So when we consider something like anger, we might say it's bad. Oh, anger's bad. I don't want to feel angry. Or, you know, anxiety's bad. I don't want to feel that. I just want peace. I got into yoga practice because I want the opposite of anxiety, which is to feel calm. But if anxiety keeps knocking on your door, my proposition is, what would it be like to really get to know it? What would it be like to see it as part of you? What would it be like to love it so deeply? And I'm really moved as I say this because I've seen this in me and so many people I've worked with. If we were to change our disposition with anxiety or anger or our sleeplessness, and we would go, oh, hello, how are you? What's going on? Why are you here? What's your story? We might suddenly realize that anxiety is our inner 5-year-old that's been trapped and frozen back in time all of our lives, crying out for a cuddle. Or we realize that the anger that we've been trying to run away from all of our lives is actually asking us to take an action, like to say no to someone that's really difficult, to make a boundary. So these bad emotions or negative feelings or unpopular experiences that are part of the human psyche actually may not be problems. In fact, maybe they've got something really special to share with us. Maybe as we get to know them, and here's the process to walk you through. Let's take anger as an example. Maybe we'll do this with anxiety as well. But, if we took a moment to say, oh, hello, anger, here you are again. And you've been knocking at my door and keep coming around. What do you want? If it's anger, it might kind of say, well, I want to smash up the place and, because that's anger, isn't it? And then when we're with it for a little while and we start asking some questions like, why? Why do you want to smash up the place? Well, Richard's been such a arse, he keeps saying this horrible stuff to you. Oh, okay. So what do you need? Why are you really here? Well, I want you to explain to him that it's not okay, or I want you to stop being in this situation all of the time. I want you to find a new place to be, or a new job, or whatever it may be. So unfortunately, though, the actions that these emotions might be asking of us could be really tricky. I'm not saying this is an easy path, but that the feelings that we have as human beings, that we tend to put a line here and go, oh, there's all the lovely yoga-y ones, compassion and gratitude and awe, and they're lovely. And I feel them regularly myself, and they're really important to bring forward because they help offset our tendency as human beings to be negative. The ones that go underneath, and I'm doing this with my hands because in the practice of Yoga Nidra, here's the conscious, here's what we're conscious of. And when we dream at night, we go through this liminal state, go through what's called a hypnagogic state, which you learn to access when you practice Yoga Nidra, and you'll learn about in the course if you want to come and take it with me. We go through this liminal state, and then we start to drop down into the unconscious material, which may be stuff that we've not touched into for years. And it tends to be the things that we repress that we're like, that's a bit uncomfy. I don't really want to go there. So to contextualize that, maybe you're going to be a Yoga Nidra teacher, and like I say, it's really growing in popularity, and some people are just finding some scripts online or taking a weekend training with somebody, and then they're teaching a Yoga Nidra class. They've got 20 people in the room. If you're lucky and you're popular, maybe you've got 5 people in the room, but one of those people just came in because they were a bit anxious and they wanted to have a lie down and feel calm. And then as they're lying there, their anxiety actually gets worse because it's knocking at their door. So what are you going to do about that? How are you going to get that back in the box? Ooh, it's awkward, isn't it? So what I have to offer you is a whole set of tools, understanding, philosophy to help you help people go really deep into these practices and transform their lives. Because that person surely came to your class or your course because they wanted to resolve their anxiety. And it may get worse because finally anxiety might be going, oh, you're listening to me, finally, you're paying attention. And I've been trying to get through to you my whole life. Again, I'm really moved as I share this with you because I've seen these transformations for people to be profound, lifelong. It's the best part of my job to receive messages on a regular basis from people saying, that thing, do you remember that thing that I had going on, James? It's not the same anymore. It's changed, but not because I got rid of it, not because I managed to cut it out of my psyche, but because I learnt about it, because I befriended it. because I could finally find enough courage and well-being and compassion in me to hold it. So last little kind of structured explanation of how this works. Because we could say what we're learning to do is, throw our arms out wide and hold our whole selves. The bits that are bent out of shape, our troubled child, our disgruntledness, as well as our love and compassion. And initially, when we start to get the freedom that this creates, the authenticity, the sense of ease within us, the sense of not having to, repress certain parts of ourselves. Not that we need to then act out on them. I'm not, I don't want you to misinterpret this. I'm not suggesting that you go out and rage at everybody because you've been trying to bottle that up for the last 20 years, or that you let your anxiety spill out into the world. But that as we move through this self-embracing experience, we become evangelical. Wow, this is changing my life. This is great. And I'm just going to be welcoming everything. And then as a really good friend of mine who's been in this game as long as I have, we laugh to each other every now and again. With the welcoming, it's like, oh, what you mean? And even that as well. There's that bit. So we start to realize that from this evangelical position of welcoming, we realize that there's also not welcoming. So there's a natural tendency in us as human beings to go, oh, I can't go there. That's too much. And we might start to judge ourselves. Oh, I've got something wrong, or I'm not doing this right. But it's okay. We're going to have to go at this slow. We're going to have compassion for ourselves. We're going to have to recognize that we're a human being. And it's messy, and it's hard, and it's scary looking into the darkness. It's scary, really, really honestly saying I'm going to make a change in my life and actually befriend myself fully. It means that we're going to meet some bits of ourselves, and this is the great paradox. Again, I've seen this so many times. I've just been working with someone one-to-one recently. It's been so beautiful to watch them go through this arc of, I will really want to do this, James, but I'm going into some stuff from my past that was really tricky. Fist in mouth kind of, and going through this beautiful arc of tremendous release of emotion. And within it, conversations that have been, to paraphrase, I've never had meditative experiences like this in my life. Now I've moved through this content that's been almost like a weight underneath. I'm really opening into these deep experiences of consciousness. And I feel free. I feel clear, and I can really get what you mean by embracing my whole self. So, it's messy being alive. But when we can begin to really hold ourselves fully and well, when we can, to quote a line from a poem, when we can touch even this pain with love. The poem's called Meditation Blues by Stephen Levine, just in case you want to read the whole poem. But when we can touch even this pain with love, when we can let curiosity, compassion, interest, a real tenderness that starts off being psychological. I'm welcoming. I've learned this thing about Kashmir shavers and Tantra, whatever you want to call it. I've learned this Yoga Nidra thing, and it's about welcoming. And ultimately you realize that you can't welcome fully because you are you. You're an ego. You're a sense of self. But as you do more and more of it, you start to recognize the part of you that's beyond you. Your sentience, your consciousness, your deepest self, which has always been and always will be welcoming. It's never been at odds with life. It's that place that I started talking about, that people went to monasteries for, that people checked out of life for, to find that great freedom. But you find it from being with. and befriending everything inside you and everything of the mess of life. And then you start to have your own awakening. But now you don't have to run away. I don't know about you, but my life, I'd let a few people down if I disappeared off to the mountains right now. My two kids, for a start, I don't think they'd be very impressed. The Buddha arguably left his family, right? And that was seen as a great honor, but you don't have to escape. There is another way, and it's a very beautiful way. So we're at time. We're at the half hour, but we did promise the opportunity for Q&A. So I'll keep my eye on the chat box, and there are two ways that you can ask questions. And you might start brewing one inside yourself now. You could either ask a question in the chat box, or if you'd like to, you can unmute yourself and actually ask the question live. And maybe just for Zoom etiquette, I'm not sure how this is going to work out. Kirsty, who's managing the Zoom session, may tell me this doesn't work, but I think if you go to your reactions, sorry, not reactions, there should be a place where you can raise your hand. I'm looking for it here, and I can't find it. Oh yes, if you click on reactions, there's a button that says raise hand. So if you'd like to ask a question in a moment, feel free to raise your hand there. And you may just unmute yourself too. So Helge, I can see your hand raised. Just give me a moment. I just want to say one thing for those of you that might be time pressed because life's real busy, which is for the next 48 hours, we're running a 20% discount on the course that I've created on Eckhart Yoga. I poured my love and my heart into this program. The discourses are really deeper, more expanded versions of what I've just shared with you. They cover the philosophy of Yoga Nidra, those philosophies I've walked you through. They cover the 6 different ways that we can welcome and be with our emotions. They cover the work of opposites. They cover the work of body sensing in Yoga Nidra. They cover the neuroscience of the practice. So looking at it from a scientific point of view, what's happening in our brain when we get to this midpoint between sleep and awake. There are practices that you can follow within the program as well. So each of the teaching segments and sections will have practices that you can then go away and lay down and do your own Yoga Nidra practice on. There are scripts in the program as well. So if you want to become a teacher, ultimately I would encourage you to find your own language. But to start with, it's good to borrow someone else's. And if you're borrowing someone else's, probably good to borrow someone else's that's been doing it for a while. So again, I wrote the scripts that are available for you to then take and go, oh, I like those words, don't like those ones. You can put them into a Word document or into Google Documents and start to make your own script up out of what I'm sharing with you. But there are complete scripts that you can follow too. So it's a really comprehensive program. We're offering you a 20% discount for the next 48 hours. And we'll send you messages about that to keep you updated. So if that's of interest to you, then this is a golden opportunity to come and join the program. So, Helgi, hello. It's nice to see you. Come off
Hi,
mute
hi.
and hi. How are
Nice,
you?
nice seeing you. I'm good. Actually, I am one of those who has gone through the course, and I've been teaching Yoga Nidra online, but as soon as this Saturday, I'm starting my own course that is Yoga Nidra based. I was trying to push that away and as much as I could, but and I'm terrified to death because, as you're saying, it feels like okay, I'm someone who is bringing this knowledge and this method to people to make them befriend their emotions, and yet here I am, scared the crap out of me, thinking, okay, maybe I'm not ready, maybe that was too soon, and it almost goes a full circle of, okay, how do I do it back on myself? Because I'm about to actually teach that. And people have been listening to my voice for like years now already, but on internet. So I have not come close enough to form that more personal relationship. And I know that you have some insight of how you deal with this personal mess of being a teacher, because there's this um, notion that, or at least I don't know where I got this notion, but that you have to be like this kind of a Buddha before you teach. And yet here I am. I woke up in the morning, I'm cranky. My dog makes me angry because he's not walking, and then he's pulling. And then what am I doing here? Trying to teach everyone to be chill, relaxed, and befriend themselves. How do you uh, go around this paradox, if you will, like teacher's dilemma of
Hmm. Yeah,
how do
yeah.
you?
No, I hear you, and particularly in the context of I think teaching can just be scary anyway, right?
Yeah.
And then there is particularly if we're talking about someone could come in and I mean I live in England and everyone's very polite in England. That it's an international joke, isn't it, that the English are overly polite, but normally this is how it would roll in a class that I would be running. That there'd be someone, this is how I'd describe it, who's putting on their shoes really slowly, and they're kind of waiting for everyone else to leave the room, and then they'll come up to me and they say, "Can I ask you something? When we're doing that yoga nidra, I had this really big emotion come up for me, or this memory came to me from years ago that I hadn't even realized was there." And then they start to describe what was going on. And if we're in teacher mode, Helgi, we might be like, how am I going to fix this? What am I going to say?
Mhm.
What do I need to do? And this is what I've come to realize with people over time, is that within reason, people have stuff come up when they're ready and not a moment before. And as teachers, if we're not going in there with a crowbar, if we're not fishing for this stuff, but if we're invitational, and if we let the person lead and we just ask some simple facilitative questions, tell me a bit more. What's happening? What else do you notice? Where do you feel that? What's that like as a sensation or as an emotion? Why is it here? What does it need? Is there something that it wants you to do, or something it's trying to tell you? If this was a guest, if this was wisdom, what would it be? And we can ask those simple questions and take people through this arc of realizing that they knew all along inside them what they need to do or not do, that they knew whether they were ready to share it or not. And actually, the best kind of teacher, and some of the best ones I've had, are those that can let go of control and the idea that I need to be, here at all. And what I mean by that, I mean, obviously, you need to be in the room, but the sense of I that gets contracted, which I think is part of the question that you're asking, which is, how am I going to hold it for everyone? Well, how about as you start teaching and people are taking off their shoes and hanging up their coats, how about you hang up your sense of I on one of those pegs and you're just present and you keep it super simple and you just ask those facilitative questions, because I think it's the I that gets us into trouble. I mean, is it not true? Like I've got into all sorts of trouble in my life. I've been through relationship breakdowns because of I think this and you think that. And but when we can park that and simply be with what's going on for people and ask these questions, it's scary as hell because we're out of control and we don't know what's going to come up. And I suppose you're asking the question of me because I have some experience, which is to say, this is what I was taught. And I trusted my teacher enough to be brave enough to do that. And as I tried it, I realized not only is it true, but oh my gosh, it's so powerful because you're not trying to fix anything. You're not trying to change anything. You're not trying to get anything back in the box. You're befriending, you're welcoming, you're being loving, curious, kind, compassionate, which is exactly what you've been talking about. And when we can embody that and do that for individuals, not only are we walking our talk, not only are we actually teaching what we're teaching through our actions, but it's incredibly powerful for people, and people will cry and people will express emotion that they've been bottling up. And it's okay. It's messy, but it's okay. So I don't know if that brings other questions for you, Helgi, or how that lands with you, but I hope that in some ways speaks to what you were asking about.
Yeah, for sure. I have a million questions, but I want to be polite also and leave everyone to speak uh, their truth too. But it's just one final thing with meditations. One thing that, especially when you start to teaching that, it's almost you lead people to this like tricky door. Like you told me that I'm gonna feel better, but I'm angry and I'm anxious, and I'm like, yeah, you're gonna feel anger better. You're gonna feel your anxiousness better, and that's the trick. So
Yeah.
I'm really close to that, and what can I say? Just I'm gonna get my butterflies, and we're all together gonna go and teach people and be with them.
Well, I mean, your work is to welcome the butterflies and say, "Oh, hello.
Yeah.
What are you here to show me and teach me? How old are you?" You know, I would say to the butterflies, "How old are you? You know, are you back to being, teenage you, or you when you were 5, or what is the fear?" And to meet it and befriend it, and to put your arms around it and go, "It's okay. You can come along with me, and you can be the wise adult that holds that worry and that concern with love and with kindness." And last thing to say, Helgi, is that 98% of people that come will have a really nice time. Many of them will fall asleep and completely miss everything that you say, and they'll come out the other side going, "Oh, that was lovely. Thank you so much." What we're talking about is how we hold the whole, and how we can be with those people that do have things come up for them, so that we're actually really being able to embrace the entire group and make space for everything to come up, and to recognize that those people that are willing to go there will likely have the most profound shifts. Everyone else had a nice snooze or had a nice, kind of hypnagogic state experience, and they'll still love it and they'll come back. But you'll do great. I'm certain
Thank
you'll
you.
do great.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Good luck with it. I wish you well.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, if anybody else wanted to ask a question, you can use the reactions button. And while I'm perhaps scanning to see if a hand pops up, I'm just going to have a little look here the through the chat box to see what kind of questions might be coming up. Okay. Oh, that's very kind, James. So you don't have to scroll back. Here's a couple of questions. It's very organised of you. What's the difference between Shavasana and Yoga Nidra? Okay. About £10 now. I'm joking. So Shavasana is Yoga Nidra, and when we lay down at the end of a yoga class, the idea is that we're allowing the body to relax, and we're inviting ourselves to fall into that in between state. We may even fall asleep. I'm sure many of you have had that experience of a sort of, like a yoga nap. So there's nothing say that's different. The difference is that in Yoga Nidra, we're very much curating that experience. We're orchestrating the experience, and we're lingering in it much longer. In the early days of going to yoga, as I was experimenting, it turned out it wasn't my bag. But, I went to a couple of Ashtanga yoga classes, and everyone like pummeled their bodies for an hour and a half and then led down for 2 minutes and ran out of the room. And then I went to other styles of classes, and it was like, oh, like we're rolling around on the floor and this is really spacious and lovely and I'm really in my being. And now we're going to lay down for like 15 minutes. And it felt lovely. And then I discovered Yoga Nidra, and it was like, wow, come and lay down for half an hour, maybe longer. And have someone guide you into the experience of your body sensations, into your breath. Have someone guide you into welcoming your emotions, working with images. We don't have time to go into that today, but there's so much complexity, rich complexity, as to how we can facilitate Yoga Nidra. So I would say Yoga Nidra is like Shavasana, like bionic Shavasana, or is it like a superpower Shavasana, where we're learning to come and surf in that, in between that hypnagogic state, that Alice in Wonderland sort of, fanciful state for an extended period of time. And the voice and the guidance helps to stop us like dropping down into sleep, helps to keep us on that, in that liminal place. So that was for you, Aditi. Ellen, thank you, James. I'm wondering how to connect, befriend your emotions through Yoga Nidra, because usually I fall asleep with Yoga Nidra. Yeah, okay. So this can come up for people. They find themselves, oh, lovely, lovely, isn't it? Here's my take on it. For the first 18 months that I practiced Yoga Nidra, I pretty much fell asleep through parts of it, or sometimes the whole thing, and I loved it. I was just recovering my energy. And as I started to recover my sleep debt, then I could stay awake for the practice more and more. And then I got really curious about, befriending emotions. But here's a couple of practical suggestions for you. And some of them are questions which you don't have to answer, publicly, but you can just consider these for yourself. The first thing is, what do you really want? You're saying, I want to learn to welcome my emotions, but I keep falling asleep. Just check in with yourself. Like, do you actually just enjoy having a snooze? Because if you do, that's totally fine. That's against the grain. There's a lot of like, don't sleep in Yoga Nidra. Sleeping's naughty. Don't do that. But my take on it is, if we're exhausted, we may actually just need that restorative moment. There's loads scientifically about what taking a nap in the day does for us. Elevates our mood, restores our nervous system, heightens our ability to concentrate, increases our emotional regulation. There's loads of great reasons for that. If you really want to befriend your emotions, do the Yoga Nidra practice in the morning when you wake up. And listen to some guidance, and specifically find a practice that's about working with emotions, which you'll find through the program, or you can find elsewhere. And the reason I'm saying that is that you'll have much less sleep momentum. So earlier in the day, you won't have that need to fall asleep. The later that we go, the more that we're likely to fall asleep. Now, if you try that and you start falling asleep in the morning, to me, that's just saying your body really needs some rest. And then I'd continue to let yourself fall asleep until you've recovered that sleep debt more, which could take, I don't know, how long's a piece of string. But quite honestly, if we could, if I could bottle sleep, I'd be a gazillionaire. I'm not a gazillionaire. I, live in a little humble house on the edge of the Cotswolds, and I love what I do. But I'm saying that, sleep is precious and it's really important and beautiful. So is learning to befriend our emotions. So you might think about changing the time of day. And the last thing to say is maybe change your position. So you can sit up, practice Yoga Nidra. You could sit in a meditative way or sit in a chair. I mean, I was laughing about this with my partner the other day. We were meditating in the morning and she's tired at the moment. And, we're meditating and I'm watching her sort of do that, even sitting up. So we can fall asleep sitting up. You could stand up and try practicing Yoga Nidra if you like. But maybe the sleep's important. But if not, think about how you change your position and the time of day that you do it. I'm going to read through a couple of these comments. Thank you very much. I'm curious as to how and what point in the Yoga Nidra practice you would allow space for this befriending. Okay. In my experience of Yoga Nidra through the Himalayan tradition, it's kind of structure as in being with the senses, doing rotation of awareness, opposites, images, breath awareness. So what is the layout? Okay. So tradition of Yoga Nidra talks about the koshas. And when you look at Tantra, it sort of throws it on its head, but let's go with the traditional model. The reason I'm saying the bit about throwing it on its head, because, there are rules and there's structure, and then there's being alive and, the mess of life. But essentially, Yoga Nidra says we make an intention, what's called a sankalpa. That's a whole webinar in and of itself in terms of how I'd like to share that with you. So I don't want to get into the how and the details right now, but we make this intention. Hopefully it's driven from within. And then we start to come into being with our body sensations. This is the Annamaya kosha, the body made up of food, the physical self. As we tour through physical sensation in a deep way, we start to get in touch with subtle sensation, which may be experienced through the body breathing, and we can feel the body softly expanding, contracting. We may start to pick up on these kind of little currents and flows of sensation, which we could describe as prana, moving through our body, the pranamaya kosha, the energy body. And the next layer of the onion, and literally think about an onion, the outer layer, and then we're into the pranamaya kosha. The next layer down, or in, is the manamaya kosha. Now we're into the realm of emotions. And emotion is energy in motion. So we've gone from physical to subtle physical into kind of subtle physical energetic, and now we're into energy in motion, emotion, which could be heaviness and lightness, warm and cold, comfortable, uncomfortable. If you're familiar with the Yoga Nidra, these are the opposites that we might use. And then love and displeasure, anger, peace, a sense of potency or shame. How these opposites of emotion play out within us, and we can start to explore them and inquire into them. What's shame like in my body? I mean, it's another webinar in its entirety, but I see so much, and for myself too, so much shame for people that there's something wrong with them, that they're broken somehow, that I shouldn't be feeling like this, or I can't feel like that, or this is bad, or that's wrong, or I'm a bad person. The difference between guilt, which says I did this thing and it wasn't so good. Shame says I'm wrong, I'm bad. So what it might be like to start to welcome and meet shame. We might see a young version of ourselves that feels scolded by a parent, alone, abandoned. Shame tends to make us, retract from being in the group. It's in some ways it was the design of it originally was a social thing to stop us being alienated by the troop, because essentially we're just advanced monkeys. So that might be the point that we start to work with emotions, their opposites. We do the welcoming piece, what are you here to show me? And then that might move into imagery, cognition. Now we're into the Vijnanamaya kosha, which is about a sense of thoughts, images, and particularly the thought of I, the most pervasive thought. I'm teaching a webinar. I'm experiencing the sun on my face. I'm warm. I'm not sure what I'm going to say next. All of those things. But the thought of I comes in the Vijnanamaya kosha. And then through the Yoga Nidra model, then as we start to go beyond the sense of I, we move towards the Ananda, the bliss. And bliss, it sounds grand, doesn't it? It could just be like, I'm free of that constant neurotic jabbering in my brain, that self-referencing, self-talk, that constant kind of yada, yada, yada. Susan said this, what are you going to say to that? What's for dinner? Oh, have you thought about this? What about doing that? Oh, that was bad. You shouldn't have done that. I wonder what's going to happen next week. Those recursive loops of thinking, just the relief of being out of that is just great. That's going from to and it's not that our mind stops, but we get perspective. So the Ananda then leads to what's beyond, which is outside of the koshas, and we might say now we're into sentience, into pure unadulterated consciousness, into our deepest essence that has always been and will always be at peace and quiet. So that's kind of, you would put the emotional inquiry right there in the middle with the Manamaya kosha, maybe. And then there are so many permutations. If you are working regularly with a group, you might want to actually just do a practice that's about emotion. So to really help people get it, because a lot of people just fall asleep in a full Yoga Nidra. So you could talk to them about welcoming. If you take the program with me, you have a real depth understanding of it. And then you could actually take a group into just practicing that kosha. That would be okay. I know I know it might be breaking with the tradition. I hear the thing about the Himalayan Institute, and there are a number of traditions out there. How I was taught through Dr. Richard Miller and the IRES protocol, it's a protocol that has 10 steps. Fortunately, I'm not doing a research experiment with everyone that I work with, and sometimes we just want to focus in on one thing. But that's generally where it will come in the model of Yoga Nidra. So, I believe that's all the questions in the chat box. Unless there's anybody that has another question or anything that they'd like to share. So I can see a few smiling faces. But it's been really gorgeous to be with you all. I really appreciate you being here. I hope that you can take something away from this time. And it's my sincere wish that you just dive into these practices and learn them in a depth way. Because even if you never teach a soul, remember what Helgi was saying. She's in there like, oh, now I'm going out there and sharing this. It will change your life. It will absolutely change your life. And just befriending yourself, welcoming yourself, will turn everything on its head and be the beginning of the end of your own suffering. So I sincerely wish you great love and luck in that journey, and that you find good teachers, good teachings, and that you find a way to really just deeply wrap your arms around yourself and hold yourself well and with love and with kindness. Thank you very much, everyone. Stay well, and perhaps I'll see one or two of you somewhere on a retreat or through the program. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Stay well. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye. Bye
Bye.
now. Bye.